Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following content is intended strictly for educational and entertainment purposes. What you're about to hear is not fiction. It's the verbatim federal courtroom testimony from one of the most explosive trials in modern black entertainment history, the racketeering case against Sean Diddy Combs and allegations implicating comedian Steve Harvey. Imagine the room, a tense, silent federal courtroom packed with journalists. The atmosphere is heavy. The bailiff calls the next witness. And into the spotlight walks none other than legendary actor Samuel L. Jackson. But this isn't about quoting movie lines or fan service. He's not here to entertain. He's here to expose the disturbing undercurrents of power, manipulation, and silence that may have defined the careers of two of Black America's most visible figures. As Jackson approached the stand, the room tightened with anticipation. This was never supposed to happen. His name hadn't even appeared in the initial trial roster. Until now, the courtroom drama had centered around music executives, bodyguards, and ex-partners revealing years of trauma. But on the 8th day of testimony, something unexpected unfolded. A sealed subpoena, quietly requested by federal prosecutors, was unsealed. Inside it was the name of the man with the gravel-voiced authority that has dominated box offices for decades. Most reporters expected a few words, maybe a general comment about industry culture. No one was ready for what came next. Jackson gave a detailed 45-minute chronological testimony. It wasn't just his voice that stunned the courtroom, it was the receipts. Jackson began by explaining exactly why he was sitting there with printed emails, DMs, and text messages. Over 2 decades earlier, after the birth of his daughter Zoe, he made a solemn promise. He vowed that she would never fall into the same Hollywood pipeline that promised dreams at the front and crushed souls at the exit. That oath turned him into what he called a quiet archivist. He didn't gossip. He documented. He stored screenshots, saved emails, listened closely to whispers. He wasn't looking to expose anyone, unless one day someone needed protecting. He'd created a private timeline, a living ledger tracking who did what, when, and to whom. And now, for the first time, it was being shared in public. Back in 2018, during a late-night shoot for the film Shaft in Brooklyn, Jackson said an assistant quietly handed him a USB drive. Inside he found a short audio file. It featured Steve Harvey's voice, coaching Lori Harvey through what Jackson described as a high-value etiquette package. One quote, Jackson said, burned into his brain. Always remember, a mogul is never your boyfriend, he's your board of directors. At the time, Jackson dismissed it as twisted, fatherly advice. But just a month later, another file arrived, this time from an audio engineer at Bad Boy Entertainment. It was a video from a studio kitchen, showing Diddy dictating Lori's outfit choices while cracking crude jokes about Stevie Wonder at Harvey's expense. That's when Jackson recognized a pattern. He'd seen the same type of behavior before, dominance disguised as mentorship, grooming masked as guidance. So he began cross-referencing flight logs, matching timelines, saving everything. He knew that if things ever turned violent or criminal, context, not just rumor, would matter. And on the stand he shared it all. One exhibit showed Harvey forwarding Diddy a template for a non-disclosure agreement titled Lifestyle Partnership. Another contained a voice memo where Diddy referred to Lori as the green room retainer fee. Jackson read each line in slow, steady baritone, calling them out as examples of parental negligence, professional predation, and cross-coastal trafficking, not of goods but of power and people. The courtroom gasped. Even Judge Ramirez raised an eyebrow. Meanwhile, Steve Harvey, seated behind his defense team, stared at the table, seemingly searching for a way out. The cross-examination only escalated things. Defense attorney Wickham tried to discredit Jackson, suggesting he was simply bitter for never signing a film deal with Bad Boy Productions. Jackson chuckled, then responded calmly, Sir, I turned down that cameo because the script required me to slap a 21-year-old intern. Turns out the director just changed the scene to real life. The jury laughed. The judge allowed it to remain on the record. When Wickham pressed harder, accusing Jackson of parroting internet rumors, the actor revealed one more bombshell, an encrypted signal chat. In it, a senior Harvey staffer bragged, this Lorepuff link is going to buy another decade of goodwill with the Family Man audience. The courtroom went dead silent. Moments later, the bell rang for morning recess, but it sounded more like a fire alarm. After the break, prosecutors asked Jackson to explain what he'd once called the 8-step grooming ladder, in a pretrial interview. Jackson nodded, then opened a worn leather-bound notebook, his so-called red ledger. He said he'd been keeping it since 1993, ever since filming Jurassic Park. The first step in grooming, he said, is access through admiration. An older gatekeeper identifies a younger talent and showers them with public praise. Step 2, co-branding. This turns admiration into public intimacy. Matching outfits at events, Father's Day posts, social media tags. By step 3, exclusivity, parental figures become full-time managers. Friends, contacts, even agents outside the inner circle quietly vanish. Jackson then lined up these steps against Lori Harvey's timeline. In 2017, Harvey gave a radio segment praising Diddy as the blueprint for black entrepreneurship. 6 weeks later, Lori's modeling calendar was mysteriously cleared. She began shadowing bad boy staff in LA. Jackson paused, then said, that's your step 2, co-branding. He held up an email chain showing Harvey's assistant requesting Lori be pulled from a Dubai Vogue Arabia shoot due to family obligations. Prosecutors argued this was the exclusivity clamp. But Jackson didn't stop there. He went back in time, way before Lori was born. In 1995, Jackson claimed, Steve Harvey made a deal on the back of a tour bus with Kirk Burroughs, a promoter at Uptown Records. Free stand-up gigs in exchange for softball interviews with rising hip-hop stars. According to Jackson, that early arrangement blurred the line between journalism and lobbying. Comedians became unofficial brand ambassadors. Then in 2006, Harvey met Marjorie, Lori's mother and the ex-wife of convicted Memphis drug lord Jim Townsend. Jackson claimed that Townsend's sealed plea agreement mentioned an entertainment corridor, used for laundering money through boutique fashion houses in Atlanta. He even presented the docket number. Prosecutors submitted it into evidence. Then came another twist. Jackson alleged that Harvey's talk show wasn't just a daytime success, it was a reputation laundering machine. He claimed it gave men like Diddy a makeover, rebranding them from nightclub moguls to benevolent mentors. As proof, he played a clip from a 2013 episode of Harvey's show. Diddy appeared to promote his charter school foundation, just days after TMZ leaked video of him throwing a kettlebell at a UCLA coach. The audience clapped in the clip. The courtroom did not. Defense attorneys objected, saying it was a Hollywood history lesson. Judge Ramirez overruled, noting that under RICO law, patterns matter. Then Jackson read from a 2020 Christmas card allegedly sent by Diddy to Steve and Marjorie. The inscription read, family is the ultimate brand alignment. Let's keep investing. Jackson closed the card, looked directly at the jury and said, that's step 8, full-scale monetization of bloodlines. There were audible gasps. Even the stenographer paused to change her paper roll. But the emails and texts were just the beginning. Jackson told the court the real evidence, the proof that haunted him, was what he called the real. A carefully curated montage of private clips sent to him by multiple whistleblowers over the past 15 years. Prosecutors dimmed the lights. A single screen descended behind the witness box. Jackson narrated live. Clip 1, a grainy iPhone video from 2009. A yacht near St. Bart's. Diddy, Steve Harvey, and 2 unnamed executives toasted champagne. In the background, a young girl, prosecutors allege it was 12-year-old Lori, performed a rehearsed dance. A woman's voice coached her off camera. Jackson froze the screen and pointed to Steve Harvey's grin. That's the moment a father becomes a recruiter, he said. Clip 2 jumped to 2015. Backstage at the BET Awards. Lori, now 18, sat in a makeup chair. A stylist whispered, Daddy says Puff will be here in 5. Lori replied, okay. Make me look older. Jackson asked the jury to notice the forced maturity. Then came clip 3, the most disturbing. March 2019. A penthouse kitchen in Soho. Diddy, shirtless, instructs a chef to plate the oysters sexy, so Lori could eat off his chain. Off camera, Lori's voice laughs nervously, you wild. The chef, clearly uncomfortable, looks into the camera, rolls his eyes and mutters, this is messed up. Jackson paused and explained, that chef resigned the next morning. He DM'd me after watching my UNCF speech about protecting daughters. The chef had signed a sworn affidavit confirming the clip's authenticity. It was now official evidence. Then came clip 4, targeting Harvey's public image. It showed a Zoom rehearsal for his 2021 motivational tour. Thinking recording had stopped, Harvey told a producer, "Without tithes, baby, there's no difference between a church plate and a revolt deal." That statement echoed through the courtroom like a thunderclap. Jackson let it hang there, letting every juror absorb the weight of it before delivering his next blow. He casually added that Diddy had wired an honorarium to Lori's LLC, a transaction that looked harmless on the surface. But Jackson turned slowly, staring down the defense table, and stated flatly, "That is the transactional backbone of grooming." The lights in the courtroom rose, but the emotional temperature didn't fall. Several jurors looked down or away, refusing to meet the defense's eyes. Diddy scribbled furiously on his notepad, while Steve Harvey silently dabbed sweat from his brow. The prosecution rested their audiovisual case with one final blow that silenced even the reporters. Jackson stood still, holding a folder with solemn intent. Then he read aloud a sworn statement from Zoe Jackson, his own daughter, filed under seal but summarized in open court. "My father's vigilance saved me from the pipeline that swallowed others." The line was sharp, clean, and devastating. The defense, scrambling, tried a desperate Hail Mary. They hinted that Jackson had doctored the videos. But their argument crumbled quickly. The government's digital forensics expert testified that the metadata clearly showed no edits. These files weren't spliced or altered. They came from distinct devices, captured over multiple years with embedded timestamps and GPS signatures intact. The judge listened, nodded, and admitted the evidence over loud objections. Jackson then stepped down, but not quietly. He left behind a courtroom that felt suddenly smaller, as if every wall had ears, as if every corner now had a hidden lens. Outside, a chant began to rise. Protesters held signs shouting, "Protect Black Daughters." The sound echoed off courthouse walls while inside, Harvey's legal team requested an overnight recess. They needed time to regroup, reframe, and possibly re-strategize. Meanwhile, whispers among the reporters hinted that two more celebrity fathers had privately contacted prosecutors. They were worried their own daughters might surface next. In part 4 of his testimony, Samuel L. Jackson walked back into the courtroom with a kind of energy that didn't demand attention. It simply assumed it. The prosecution wheeled in a rolling cart stacked with bankers' boxes. Each one was marked Vista Aviation. Inside were 27 flight manifests covering a staggering span of 13 years. Jackson leaned forward, his horn-rimmed glasses perched at the bridge of his nose. He explained calmly how the defense's entire narrative, of innocent celebrity vacations, would crumble under the sheer weight of logistics. Every manifest, he said, could be lined up against Steve Harvey's public appearances and Diddy's tour schedules. He began in 2010, a summer supposedly marked by Steve Harvey mentoring inner-city teens in Chicago while Diddy was allegedly overseas in Italy. But the Vista Aviation ledger told a different story. On July 13, a Gulfstream 4 departed Van Nuys, California, bound for a private field just outside Nassau, Bahamas. The listed passengers? Mr. Sean Combs. Miss Marjorie Harvey. Miss Lori Harvey, age 17, Jackson read aloud. A wave of gasps swept across the courtroom. One alternate juror visibly mouthed, 17? But Jackson didn't flinch. He didn't soften it. He let the weight of the facts speak for themselves, pacing slowly, letting the dates and names pile up into a mountain of reasonable doubt. A 2012 manifest showed something even more telling. Steve Harvey's own philanthropic foundation had paid the handling fees for a round trip to Anguilla. Jackson didn't editorialize, he simply pointed out that the same tail number later appeared in Diddy's tour rider. And 2 years after that? Lori Harvey was back on the same jet, this time alongside members of the Bad Boy staff and a stylist known for organizing outfits for what were allegedly freak-off events. Jackson called it a breadcrumb trail, one that consistently placed Lori in the same villas, the same parties, the same remote locations Cassie had described in her civil complaint against Diddy. Halfway through this part, Jackson introduced another layer, phone tower pings. A split-screen map appeared on the courtroom monitors. On the left was the location of Steve Harvey's syndicated radio show broadcast in Atlanta. On the right, a cluster of calls from Harvey's personal number, all bouncing off towers in Anguilla. These were supposed to be live shows, Jackson said, but the recordings were pre-taped so he could be on Mr. Combs's yacht. The defense objected loudly, calling it speculation. But the judge overruled. The phone records were real, admissible, and chilling. Jackson's voice didn't rise. He simply closed the folder and said, "The question is no longer whether these trips happened. The question is what these powerful men hoped to gain by hiding them." By the time the court recessed for lunch, the room felt less like a trial and more like a forensic audit. People whispered that Part 4 had changed everything. Those flight logs, those call records, They had turned what looked like a celebrity friendship into something far darker. Jackson no longer seemed like Hollywood royalty, he was now a meticulous archivist, someone who had spent years building a case piece by piece. After lunch the lights dimmed again. A technician wheeled in a 50-inch monitor and Jackson, now seated, held a slim black remote. He warned the jury in a calm voice, this was captured on September 3, 2018, 2 weeks before Lori turned 22. The location? A mansion on Martha's Vineyard. The name in Diddy's security logs? White Rabbit. The room fell silent. Jackson hit play. The screen showed grainy night vision footage. A poolside cabana. The camera angle suggested it was mounted on a wall. Subtitles appeared as the muffled audio played. Diddy's voice came first, "Pass me the LV bag, Fahim." Jackson emphasized the spelling, Fahim with 2 E's, confirming it was the same security chief previously named. Then another voice, unmistakable. Steve Harvey laughed and said, "You wild puff." Then the phrase, "Rinse her then send her to makeup." The audio was scratchy, overlaid with generator hum, but the words were visible. Just 45 seconds long, but it was a nuclear moment. The clip ended and the room erupted. A marshal had to hush spectators. Jackson didn't gloat. Instead, he calmly explained how they'd obtained the footage. A former estate manager, disturbed after hearing press coverage, had turned over the drive. No one had ever disabled the security camera in the cabana. Jackson pointed out how the phrase "rinse her" matched what Cassie and another woman, Dawn Richard, had described as Diddy's post-freak-off routine. Women were told to shower with eucalyptus oil before being camera-ready. And then there was Steve Harvey, not just present but actively engaging. Laughing. Standing mere feet from a bag that Homeland Security would later seize, containing benzodiazepines and prepaid Visa cards. During cross-examination, the defense flailed. They suggested deepfake manipulation. They questioned timecode integrity. They even floated the bizarre idea that Harvey might have been a hologram, part of a comedy sketch. But the jury didn't buy it. Their faces were stone. They scribbled notes every time the word hologram came up. Jackson remained unshaken. He reminded the court that Harvey's phone metadata placed him on Martha's Vineyard that night. And the estate's Venmo logs? They showed a $4,800 payment from Harvey's LLC for a late checkout. Then Jackson read from a text Lori had sent a friend the next morning. "Puff says my smile is ratings gold. Dad keeps telling me ownership is everything. I feel like property." The courtroom went silent. You could hear the bailiff swallow. The Vineyard tape wasn't just hearsay, it was visual proof. It exposed the hollow core of the Harvey brand, the contradiction between what he preached and what he practiced. The tape aired for just 12 minutes. But in that time, it bent the entire trajectory of the trial. After recess, Jackson shifted gears. He called this part, the one-on clause, named after an obscure addendum buried in Steve Harvey's 2017 multi-platform deal with Endeavor Content. Jackson held up a red-line contract. Paragraph 16C, granted Endeavor first-look rights to Harvey-branded faith-based content, with a twist. If strategic partners within Diddy's portfolio helped finance it, profits would be shared more favorably. That clause meant one thing: Harvey's faith-based empire, from gospel docuseries to motivational programming, relied on Diddy's financial backing. Jackson traced how a gospel series stalled in 2019 until Bad Boy Ventures wired $2 million. Only then did it premiere on a FAST channel partially owned by Diddy. The title? Sunday Service, Legacy of Praise. A name aligned with Kanye West's choir. Another subtle tether in Diddy's web. Then came the emails, Harvey's own business manager advising him to maintain exemplary optics with Combs. One bullet point read, "L's companionship remains a stabilizing symbol." Jackson paused. Companionship, he repeated, is sanitized language for what prosecutors allege was trafficking by persuasion. To close Part 6, Jackson introduced testimony shielded under witness protection. A former Harvey household chef claimed Lori was once instructed to wear a specific dress, white Tom Ford, no underlay, for a gala dinner because, quote, the guests like her natural line. The directive allegedly came from Marjorie Harvey herself, citing preferences from Diddy's stylist. Defense called it irrelevant. Jackson fired back, "We've already established Harvey's financial reliance on Diddy. Now we establish behavioral concessions within the Harvey household." The judge allowed it. Jackson concluded, the one-on clause created a pipeline where money flowed only if the Harvey brand remained in good standing. And that meant ensuring Lori's presence at events handpicked by Combs. Then came the final blow. Jackson played a viral Steve Harvey clip. The comedian looked into the camera and told fathers to protect your daughter's gate. Jackson then turned to the jury. But the gate, he said, was rented by the hour. And the landlord sits right there at the defense table. The courtroom froze. Every eye locked onto Steve Harvey. Jackson gathered his binders and walked back to the counsel table, the air behind him filled with stunned silence, and murmured, "Wow." The day adjourned, but the impact of parts 4 to 6 would linger long after the gavel dropped. Samuel L. Jackson had connected every dot and exposed a system most never believed existed. This wasn't just celebrity gossip anymore. It had all the elements of a deeply orchestrated corporate spiritual Ponzi scheme. Private jet logs, secret recordings, and a legal clause oddly nicknamed after gospel royalty were all coming together. And at the center of this storm was Samuel L. Jackson, who now stood in the courtroom, delivering testimony with the gravity of a war veteran recounting the battlefield. The room went silent after his words. But the silence didn't last long. The defense wasn't going down without a fight, and now it was their turn to strike back with drama of their own. Diddy's lead attorney, Brian Steele, approached the courtroom lectern like a performer about to steal the show. Confident and flashy, he opened by aiming straight at Jackson's public persona. "Mr. Jackson," he began, "you've spent decades playing heroes on screen. Isn't it true you're just acting again today?" Samuel didn't blink. He folded his arms and replied with a voice that could quiet thunder, "Sir, there are no retakes in a federal courtroom." You could almost hear the gasp ripple through the gallery. Steele tried to break him with photos from glitzy galas where Jackson and Diddy once stood side by side. You drank his champagne, walked his red carpets. Now you're calling him a predator? The lawyer pressed. But Jackson didn't budge. Yes, he admitted they crossed paths in public spaces. But that, he argued, was civility, not complicity. "I was there to promote a movie," he said. "I wasn't backstage coaching him on how to treat young women." Then Steele veered the line of questioning towards Steve Harvey, attempting to cast Jackson's earlier comments about Harvey's parenting as nothing more than tabloid-style gossip. "Isn't it true you've never met Lori Harvey in private?" he asked. Jackson nodded. "True. That's why I blamed her father, not her." This time the audience did gasp. But it wasn't the statement itself, it was the raw honesty of it that took their breath away. Steele then presented what he claimed was a smoking gun. An email thread in which Steve Harvey had thanked Jackson for giving him personal advice about navigating Hollywood with his family. He wanted the jury to believe Jackson had turned friendly advice into public ammunition only after the Diddy scandal surfaced. But Jackson was ready and waiting. He seized the opening like a seasoned boxer. "Exactly," he said. "I coached Steve on setting boundaries. Boundaries he ignored. Just like your client." The courtroom buzzed again. Judge Morales ruled out most of the defense's technical objections but allowed the major themes of Jackson's message to stand. And when Steele finally stepped away, Jackson straightened himself, looked the jury dead in the eye, and dropped a line that hung in the air like smoke after a fire. "I'm not here because of rumors. I'm here because silence got too damn loud." Even the court reporter paused for a moment before her keys clicked again. The next move came from Assistant U.S. Attorney Ramirez. She introduced a key piece of evidence. A mislabeled DT cassette, found in an abandoned storage unit once rented by someone close to Diddy's camp. As the lights dimmed and the audio began to play through small speakers, a chilling moment unfolded. A voice, unmistakably Jackson's, asked, "Puff, why you got teenagers in here?" A second voice responded, lower, muffled but clearly Diddy's, laughing, "They're grown enough for what I need." You could hear glass clinking, music playing, background chatter. But then, abruptly, the tape cut off. Ramirez asked Jackson to confirm the authenticity. He nodded, explaining it had been recorded in 2003 at a Midtown after-hours spot called Studio 23. He said he had started carrying a pocket recorder because he saw the excess spiraling out of control. "I thought if anything ever went sideways, proof would matter," he told the jury. "But for years, I locked it away because no one wanted to hear the ugly soundtrack behind the shiny videos." The defense exploded, demanding the tape be excluded. They cited everything from chain of custody to possible spoliation. But Judge Morales overruled them. "The jury may weigh credibility," she said. Then Jackson dropped another bombshell. One of the voices laughing on the tape, he claimed, was that of Justin Combs, Diddy's teenage son. "That night," he said, "I realized this wasn't just a one-time thing. It was generational." And Steve Harvey was about to feed his daughter into the same machine. The courtroom was now hanging on every word. The prosecution used the tape to show a larger pattern. How Diddy courted young companions, normalized a party culture without boundaries, and then kept everyone quiet with expensive gifts and whispered promises. Jackson told the jury that after the recording while riding in a limo, Diddy had bragged, "Hollywood dads bring me gifts. I make those gifts sparkle." The phrase landed hard, especially when earlier evidence showed that around that time, a Cartier bracelet had been sent from Diddy to Lori Harvey. The contrast between the glitter and the grit was impossible to ignore. As the tape ended, the jurors exchanged stunned glances. The glamorous image of the music mogul was gone. All that remained was the grainy hiss of that cassette, a relic not meant to see daylight, now a damning piece of the puzzle. With the recording admitted into evidence, the prosecution turned to the emotional and generational damages. Jackson testified that after publicly criticizing Steve Harvey's parenting, the industry retaliated. Script offers dried up. Calls weren't returned. Invitations to charity events suddenly disappeared. "That's the price of telling truth in a town that sells fantasy," he said, voice gravelly with fatigue. He recounted a tense encounter in 2021, backstage at a celebrity golf event. Steve Harvey, he claimed, approached him and said, "Brother, you cost me sponsors." Jackson fired back, "No, you cost yourself a daughter's trust." The jury scribbled frantically, some visibly shaken. Even Judge Morales' stern expression softened slightly, revealing something close to alarm. Then Jackson referenced an encrypted text he had received just days earlier. On the courtroom monitor, a screenshot appeared. It was a message from Diddy to Steve Harvey. "Sam's on the warpath. Remind your girl NDs matter." The gallery erupted in chaos. The judge hammered her gavel, demanding silence. The defense tried to object, but Morales had already reviewed the metadata and allowed limited discussion. Ramirez argued that this was more than damage control, it showed a clear fear of exposure and an effort to control witnesses. Not only was Diddy trying to shut things down, he was allegedly enlisting Harvey to do it. Jackson wrapped up his testimony with a simple, powerful truth. "I can't undo what these men did, but I can make sure it ain't hidden behind ratings or royalties again." As he stepped off the stand, reporters ran from the room to file breaking headlines. Diddy sat stone-faced, whispering to his counsel. Steve Harvey, under subpoena, stared silently at the floor. Outside the courthouse, commentators declared the day a seismic shift. Streaming numbers for Diddy's music plummeted. Advertisers pulled their support from Harvey-branded media. And social media exploded with hashtags like #ListenToSam and #ProtectBlackDaughters. Inside, the jury, though not sequestered, was escorted by marshals. They clutched notepads full of explosive quotes that would soon shape their deliberations. Tomorrow, the prosecution would call financial forensics experts to follow the money trail. But everyone in that courtroom knew the real currency had already changed hands. What mattered now wasn't just the paper trail, it was the credibility of a Hollywood elder unafraid to burn decades-old friendships for the sake of truth. And with his last words still echoing beneath the vaulted ceiling, the trial of Sean Diddy Combs crept ever closer to a verdict that might change everything we thought we knew about fame, fatherhood, and the price of silence.